Are you ready to explore the dark and thrilling worlds of apocalyptic dystopian horror, fantasy, and sci fi media? Welcome to the Final Chapter Book Club, where we dive deep into the most gripping tales of survival, despair, and the unknown. Join us as we review the latest and greatest media, discuss mind bending plot twists, and uncover hidden gems that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Today, we're going to be talking about a film, which is a little different. I know we are the Final Chapter Book Club, but films have books. They're called scripts. It counts. We're going to be discussing Signs by M. Night Shyamalan. I actually had not seen this film before, so I was very excited to finally watch it and get to experience this. Jason, if you'll go ahead and tell us about the film.
Sure. Let's start with the director, M. Night Shyamalan, known for the twist. I'm sure everyone's seen his films. Sixth Sense is one of the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
Actually started his career with that, and he's been pretty consistent his whole career with the surprise twist ending. But A-list actors always in all his films. He's really good with suspension of disbelief and psychological horror. And this movie is no different. Signs is a film about a preacher that loses his faith and he's trying to keep it together for his family in the midst of a very supernatural event that's happening around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically the story. It sounds really simple, but it breaks down into very deep, complex things. And let's start with saying when the movie came out, it was marketed as something different than what it actually is. So it's
Mm-hmm.
marketed as more of a science fiction alien invasion movie.
Mm-hmm.
The trailers show a little bit too much, if you ask me, because it kind of gives away some of the stuff. We watched a behind the scenes documentary with M. Night Shyamalan about it, and he talks about almost everything in the film. And if you give it a deep dive, you'll notice that it's much more than just an alien film. In fact, it's not a film about aliens at all. It's
Mm-mm.
about a man being tested, regaining your faith.
Yeah, losing faith and then finding it again.
I really like the way the story is told. It comes in, there's no exposition. You don't know what's going on, only the family dynamic and their everyday life of what's going on. The event happens right away, and you kind of see how they relate with each other based on what's going on around them. And it's really neat. The story unfolds in flashbacks, and they're done very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
You're wondering by the time the big reveal happens about the main character, you already know what happened. You already have a feeling about what's happened. They've
Yeah.
already told you, but it's not like Quentin Tarantino looking directly at the camera, characters winking, saying all kinds of cheeky dialogue. It's
Mm-hmm.
very clever. It's very good. It's
Mm-hmm.
subtle.
No, I loved this movie, and I know even when I told my husband I was going to be watching this, he was like, "Be prepared to not like it because not a lot of people liked it." And I kind of set that to the side, and I'm really glad I did that. I didn't go in with any expectations, because I really enjoyed this film, especially after watching the documentary and really understanding exactly what Shyamalan's theories were and what exactly he wanted to convey through this film. It was really, really good. This film was released in 2002. It was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, as we have said his name several times already. It starred Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, Rory Culkin, and Abigail Breslin. So, rather small cast of main characters. It's a science fiction thriller. I'd also add in, like, it's a bit of a drama. But basically,
A lot of
it's
drama.
about a priest who lost his wife in a horrible, horrible freak accident. And after he lost his wife, he completely stepped away from God. He chose to step down from the church and just focus on his family and go through his grief at their rural farmhouse in the middle of Pennsylvania. And all of a sudden,
Which most of
these.
the film happens in the farmhouse.
Yes. But they're in a farmhouse in rural Pennsylvania, and crop circles begin showing up in their cornfields. And at first, they write it off as like a group of teenagers who are just trying to prank them and things like that. And then, television and news starts explaining that these crop circles have popped up all over the world in India and everywhere else. And so people are getting a little concerned, but still sort of writing it off as like, this is the most massive prank that's ever been done in
Right.
history.
Right.
Then as the film progresses, you see the relationship between Graham, Mel Gibson's character, and his brother Merrill, played by Joaquin Phoenix. And
Excellent.
oh, absolutely.
They're both good. They both play off of each other really good. You
They
get the
really,
feeling
really do.
they seem like
Honestly,
brothers.
this is probably one of my favorite films I've seen Mel Gibson in. He
Really.
really understood his character. He really, I don't know. I feel like oftentimes the Mel Gibson films that I see are so um like he's got to play this wacky character, or it's something that's just so intense, like Passion of the Christ and things.
Yes.
It's just really nice to take a step back and just see him get to like the basics of acting. And the choices he made throughout this film were phenomenal. And you see those two characters, the brothers, and the way they interact with each other, the
Mm.
understanding that Graham has as a pastor, and how that conveys itself with the family dynamic. He's so patient and calm,
Yeah, there's
even though he has no reason to be, because he
oh
lost
yeah.
his wife and he's grieving, and the world feels like it's ending because all of a sudden these crop circles have popped up and they're realizing, there's aliens and all of these things. And it was just wild to see how all of this came together to create this beautiful tension within the family. Because it's not like they were in a big area. It's not like they were in a super populated area.
No,
Like,
they didn't really have any support.
no,
Yeah.
it was just this family. And really, the only person other than the family that knew about the crop circle was the town sheriff. Again, another phenomenal actress.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
but basically, they just kind of kept to themselves. And then, these alien ships start appearing in the sky. And there's all this tension between the family from past things that have happened. And the two kids, Rory Culkin and Abigail, were amazing. Like for their ages, and for them to understand what was happening and be able to do that. Like not, and Abigail was what, 6 when she filmed this?
He's 6 years old, yep.
She's such a tiny little bean, and she really, like, they looked at her and was like, he just said that he hates his father and we need you to cry because that makes you upset. And
Yeah,
she
there's a
just starts
scene.
squalling, and it's
Yeah, there's
so
this
good. It's so stinking good. So I love this film so much because it's not about aliens. Like, that is a big plot point, but it is not about aliens at all. It's simply about family coming together and redeeming themselves for the things that they think they've done wrong, and coming together in peace and in finding their faith, not only in God but finding faith in each other. And I really loved that.
definitely.
Absolutely. It talks about the loss of Graham's wife. It talks about the loss of Merrill's career and how he was a phenomenal baseball player, but because he struck out so often, because he would just swing at anything, he never
Because it
made it.
felt wrong not to swing.
Yeah, he never made it anywhere else. And Rory, the little boy, trying to be the big brother and be there for his sister and also his father, like, and Abigail just being the sweet little thing. It was so amazing how they took each and every one of these characters' flaws or quirks and made it a very important part of the story. I was so impressed because, like, at the end, when, like, you sort of get the twist, it didn't really feel like that much of a twist, other than the fact
No.
of, like, oh, so everything happens for a reason, even if it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
seems like it, like, Abigail, the little girl, had this quirk where she would drink cups of water and it wouldn't taste right, and she would just leave these cups of water all over the house, like kids do with their weird quirks. And in the end, it's one of the most important things that ended up saving the family's
Yeah, no,
life.
so we'll start with the title of the film. It's misleading.
Mm-hmm.
It's dual meanings. So the first meaning is the crop circles, the signs, There's a big speech that Mel Gibson gives in the movie, and it's like the most important thing
The two
in the
types
whole
of
movie.
people.
Yes, he talks about where there's two types of people in the world, where there's people, are you one of the people that sees signs and wonders and knows that there's something else out there? Or are you the other side that just sees
Mm-hmm.
in it could be anything, you know, we don't know what it is. And because this whole movie breaks down to that. And from the very beginning, the whole plot of the movie is his wife has dreams of things that happen and they casually talk about it, but on her in her dying breath, she says some really profound things that end up playing a part of the whole story. She predicts that Meryl will use his bat to defend the family.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like everything that happened in the film was not something that it was destined to be, no matter
Mm-hmm.
what. Like,
Yeah,
no matter
it's
what.
predestined.
Meryl didn't have a career in baseball because to him, it felt like it felt right not to swing, but it was embedded in him to swing because in the future he's going to save someone's life by swinging the bat. And also the daughter, they casually remark that when she was born, Mel Gibson has this really cute speech. You know, he talks
Mm-hmm.
to her. He's like in bed with, you know, tucking her into bed, and he tells her, you know, when you were born, all the
No,
nurses.
no, no. It was
Yeah.
right. It was at the end when they're putting up the boards, and he's
Oh
trying.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was trying to
Yeah. He tells
comfort
her.
them, and he
Yeah.
tells
He
her
tells her.
when she was born that the nurses were in awe of her, and they called her an angel
Yep.
because she didn't cry, and she was just so beautiful and sweet, and that everyone was just so in awe of her.
But she
And
also has dreams, and
mm-hmm.
like she constantly comments that, you
Yeah,
know, this
because it
I'm dreaming. Is this a
again
dream? I
very
dreamed this.
passively it stated how she dreamt, like she had that feeling because Rory's character um asked his sister, he was like, are you having one of those feelings again? And it
Yes, they
was,
all knew about it.
yeah, like she had a feeling the night that her mother passed.
So the whole movie was basically just like a very profound prophecy that his mom saw, that their mom saw, the wife
Mm-hmm.
saw, and knew that it was going to happen, and just had faith that it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Told her husband and died with a smile on her face, and her husband 6 months later still can't get over the grief. But every day and all around him are signs that this thing that his wife was right, that things aren't as terrible as you think. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna be okay, you know. One of the last things she says to him is give the kids a hug. She says something individual for each person, you know. Tell
Except for him, which I thought was interesting. She
yes,
really, all she said to him was I love you, and then she
yeah,
said tell my son
because
this, tell my daughter this, and then she said the last
I
words she
think
said were see, swing
yeah,
away. Talking like tell Meryl,
tell
see,
Meryl
swing
swing away.
away. And
Yeah,
uh
that's I think that's because she knew he was a good man and he would. Well, she didn't think that he would question his faith. That was the number one thing.
mhm.
That's one of the human things about the movie is
Yeah.
that it would just be stupid if he was just like, "Yeah, my wife died, no problem. She's in heaven. Everything's gonna be great.
Mhm.
I don't know what she said to me on her deathbed, but it means something, and I'll know when I know." No, it was none of that. It was like babbling words and oh my God, he couldn't even get over the last words. They were ingrained in his brain, like he
Yeah.
could not forget.
Because
Like,
he's
and
like,
who
why
could?
would
Who
she say
would?
that? Why would she say that? Like, why is that
Yeah.
the last thing on her mind as she's dying?
And it was kind of like, why is she thinking about talking about Meryl, you
Hmm.
know, when
And
she, you know,
he put it out there too. Like he put it off as like it was the synapses in her brain firing off, and she
yeah.
was reliving one of your baseball games. Like he completely wrote it off.
Mm,
And he was so, I think part of him was really jealous and angry that Meryl got a last
he
words
was.
and he didn't, you know. And so it was so difficult. You were talking earlier about the twist and how M. Night Shyamalan, he's so well known for the twist in his films. Like, obviously, The Sixth Sense and into this. And I don't want to talk about Sixth Sense and Unbreakable too much because we're probably going to discuss those at
Yeah,
a later date.
definitely.
It's got to
Oh, yeah.
happen. But I was really happy in the end when it seemed like everything was okay. They'd survived the night. They'd come out of the basement. They were trying to get the son's inhaler so that he could figure out his asthma and everything. And then they turn around and there's an alien standing in their living room holding the little boy. Oh,
Let's
wild.
stop you right there.
Sure, go
You
ahead.
know, a lot of people, so even when we watch the behind the scenes, they never call it an alien. They call it the entity, they call it the shadow.
They said alien one time in the documentary.
Yeah, and it was in the context of like the crop circles and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think I mean this is a movie about religion and
Mm-hmm.
I've always and I know it's not really a popular belief, but I do believe that like that those were demons in the movie and
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big plot points is that there's water on Earth, and they figure out that these aliens are allergic to water or that
Like their
water can harm
weakness.
them.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not really played out. Like their ships are in the air and they land in places that are right next to water. And it's like even when they say in the news report, they say, "Oh, they think that some of them are allergic to water, or they might be, intolerant to water." Merrill and they all go, "This is no." They said even the guy on the news says that's just unfounded. That's probably
It
Joaquin
doesn't make
Phoenix's
sense.
character doesn't
Yeah.
make that's not true. He says,
Hmm.
because it's not true. The only time that water works is when it's blessed. And the
Hmm.
little girl is like an angel. Like they said it.
Hmm.
She was like an angel. She may not be a real angel. She may not be like, the archetype of an angel. She may not have wings and she may
But there
not be
was
heavenly.
definitely something supernatural going on
She's
with this
blessed.
family in general. Like,
Yes.
yeah,
She's blessed. She has some kind of knowledge of foresight. She can dream things.
it's just like her
Also, her
mom.
mom, all of them have some kind of sign. Um, when Rory Culkin's character is threatened, like he has asthma and it stops his lungs from inhaling this poison
Hmm.
gas, and it's again almost impossible that that would happen. But it's like they say, it's almost like he had asthma so that when the time came, he
He
would
would
not get
survive.
killed.
Hmm.
Yes, and man, they all add up to like less than a supernatural alien experience and more of like God is telling you that he's real. He's
Yeah.
telling you he's like the test of your faith is over.
Hmm.
Now all you have to do is accept the thing.
Hmm.
Just it's right in front of you. The
See,
signs are
I
there.
I have a theory, just a personal theory,
Yeah.
that I love where you're going with the demon
Yeah.
analogy and that concept, because I think that it is a
Well,
manifestation of inner demons,
yeah.
because there's a
Yes.
specific reason that crop circle showed up in their farm. So the way Graham's wife passed is she was taking a walk before dinner, and the local
She never walked.
veterinarian was driving down the road, and he fell asleep behind the wheel, and he ended up driving off the road and pinned her between his vehicle and a tree. And they didn't move her because she was pinned in such a way that she was still alive, and they wanted Graham to be able to come and say his final goodbye. So that day, Graham encounters the alien. He gets a call from this man out of nowhere. He gets a call, and the guy just says hello and then hangs up. So he goes to this man's house and basically confronts him. And the veterinarian, is sitting in the car, played by M. Night Shyamalan. He's sitting there in his car. Basically, he looks at Graham and says, "It was some weird accident. Had she not been there, I'd have just woke up with a bad headache, and
Yep.
I could have fallen asleep any other time
He's
before or
never
after
fallen
that. He's
asleep
never
before in his
fallen asleep.
life.
It was like it was
Ever.
meant to be. It was
Wasn't even tired, he
mm-hmm.
said. He
It was
said the only
just
thing
meant
that
to
he can
be.
think of is that it was meant to be, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the only thing he can think of. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna leave now,
Yeah, but he
and
said
there's
outright,
something.
he said, "I'm sorry for what I've done to you
Yes,
and your family. I'm going to go to the lake because the news is saying that maybe they don't like water because the crop circles aren't anywhere near water. So I'm going to go to the
yeah,
lake, and don't go in my pantry because I locked one of them in there." And
yeah.
so Mel Gibson's like, "Huh?" And this dude just drives off. So Mel Gibson goes into this man's house, and he looks under the pantry door, and he takes a knife, and he's trying to see a reflection. And all of a sudden, after a couple of minutes, the alien creature reaches out under the door, and Mel Gibson, Graham, he freaks out and like slices the fingers off of this thing because he's like, "Oh my gosh." So that happens, and he goes home, and they decide they need to, they're trying to decide as a family, do they need to bunker down? Do they need to also go to the lake and protect themselves? And it's
Talk
just
about
so
that.
interesting to me because it was like the man had been haunted by what he did to Graham's wife.
It's a
And
metaphor
he
for a
had
demon in his
mhm,
closet.
he kept it locked away in the closet. Like, he never approached the family, he never apologized. I mean, how do you after such an awful thing happens? And finally, he's approached with it, he shoves it back in the closet, he's sitting in the car, and Graham shows up. They have their conversation, and then Graham approaches his demon in that same closet. And the first thing he does is react with violence and aggression, which is very odd for him because Graham always puts himself out there as a calm and patient and
That's fair.
loving, comforting man, a comfort, yeah. And then he immediately freaks out. And so he runs away and decides that they need to run away to the lake. And the kids and his brother are like, "No, we're going to stay here. This is the home where we lived with mom. We're not leaving our home." And I thought that was such a beautiful metaphor. It came together so beautifully, I thought. Look at any of the ads or commercials for this movie. It was like a new alien creature feature. Like, that's what everyone
Yeah.
expected. And it's not that at all. And I think that's
No.
what did this movie a disservice.
Ray, the M. Night Shyamalan character, confronts the demon, but still can't face it alone because he's not to blame. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
He's not to blame. And the minute he says, "I'm so sorry for what I did to your family," he relieves himself of all guilt. And the demon is guilt. That is the demon. It is guilt.
Yes.
It is guilt. And they're all guilty of the things unsaid between themselves and her before she died. He didn't even get to say anything to her. He just listened to her talk when she died. So he probably feels like there's a lot of unresolved things. Yes, he
Mm.
confronts the demon in the closet, but he runs away. He
Mm-hmm.
lashes out with violence and runs away. You realize that it's not his demon either. It's the whole family's demon. And
Yes.
so the whole family has to have an opportunity to confront him in a metaphorical way in this movie. And
Mm-hmm.
it works out so great because it is very surprising. The twist that comes together just from all the casual dialogue and the scenes that you've seen before comes together in such a
Mm-hmm.
spectacular way. It's like it's almost as good a payoff as The Sixth Sense. It's got that
Mm-hmm.
really great thing where you kind of gave you all the clues the whole time, and they're just layering metaphors
And you don't
deep
really
and
think anything of it until the very end when everything comes together.
it's like you pulled the slot machine on you know what I mean, and you
Ding,
got the
ding, ding.
jackpot, and you're like, oh, and you're looking at your friend. It's one of those moments when you're in the theater and you're just totally engrossed in the screen, and when it
It's like,
drops,
who's
you're
gonna
looking
get
at
it?
your friend and you're touching your friend. You're going, ah.
Ah, yeah, no, I remember when we watched this together. You were like, because you've seen it, I hadn't seen it. You were waiting for me to get it. I was like, no way, because like when they turn around and the aliens in the living room, that's like the big shock moment. And what I thought was
Yeah,
really clever, because especially, gosh, 2002, so CGI was still fairly new. Like video
yeah,
effects were still so new, and at this time, at least, it explained in the documentary that M. Night Shyamalan was not a fan of CGI and things because he
no,
really preferred practical effects. But of course, with something like this, you had to use some form of CGI. But I thought they did it in such a clever way because the hard thing with CGI during this time was the lighting and everything. It was hard to get it correctly. That's why that one scene from Alien is so kind of funny because the alien just doesn't seem to fit at all because the lighting is wrong on the creature and the
lighting
CGI.
on the mat. Yeah,
It's so wild.
yeah.
So it's so fascinating because they don't hardly really pan to the creature for a long time. You see its reflection in the TV, and then you see it for a brief moment, and then it snaps back to Meryl and Graham standing there, just standing still, waiting to figure out what to do. And so I liked that because when you are afraid of something, genuinely, when you are afraid, you don't want to look at it. You tend to
Yeah,
look
you
away, you tend to close your eyes. And I liked
or
how when you watch horror movies, you don't tend to look away because you're like, this is the film, you want to watch the film. And I feel like it put you in this space of where it forced you to look away and it made
ooh,
that suspense better for me. It really
feels
put you
better.
in that
Yeah,
moment because of the way it was shot. And the lighting in this film was so beautiful.
it's
Gosh, over and
pretty good.
over. I was so impressed. The
I'm
night
gonna talk.
scenes in this film are gorgeous. Like
Oh God,
just
yes.
when you get into the basis of the film, lighting and music. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad they decided not to go and make it completely silent. Cuz initially they weren't going to have any music, and then the
Yeah,
composer and Shyamalan were talking, and finally it came to this point where he
James
was like,
Horner.
"This movie stands alone on its own without the music. All right, James, take it and make it better. Just add to
Oh,
it, because
I think she's the word.
it was so good, that 3-note motif that just kept repeating itself over and over, and it was so suspenseful and minor, and then it gets so hopeful there at the end when the boy wakes up, when Morgan wakes up, and it's just, oh, it's so beautiful. I was so impressed. Like, this is such a
I
well-rounded film.
and it reminds me of one of the scenes in the movie, the very last scene that you just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The kids on the ground. It's all one shot. The camera pans up into the air, backwards through the second story window, and you see the broken glass.
Mm-hmm.
And then the camera turns, and it's summer. And then
Mm-hmm.
as the camera turns, you see another window, and then all of a sudden, it's 6 months later, it's snowing.
Yeah.
And then it keeps panning, and you see a bathroom door, and you
Yes.
see Mel Gibson's
And it's the
character in there.
same bathroom door, which is in the first shot when the movie starts.
Right.
It's such a nice
When
button.
he comes out and you see he's wearing his priest collar again, and he
Yes.
doesn't say a word. He just listens. You can hear his kids playing again outside.
Yeah.
They're playing and laughing. He's looking off. He's straightening, and he doesn't look at the camera. He just walks off screen, and that's it.
It's
I mean,
gorgeous. It's
there's
so,
no, yeah.
it's so
I want to talk
nice.
about something else that I find a lot in horror and also in psychological horror and psychological drama. And it's a phenomenon that nobody ever talks about. And I'm not saying that I'm the one to discover it or anything like that, but I noticed it a lot in some of the things that we've been doing lately.
Mm-hmm.
Is apathy.
Yeah.
Is this
Apathy.
crazy, wild apathy that characters that people in general have for things that they cannot understand, that their brain doesn't want to, process. And so it can be something scary or it could just be something traumatic, but some somehow their mind blocks it out and they don't see the thing, and or they see something different, or the mind always chooses to see things, but sometimes the mind filters out what it doesn't want to. And
Mm-hmm.
I see this again in this movie, like things are happening around them, and the main character, especially Meryl, like Joaquin Phoenix, is like, this is BS. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then right away, he's wearing a tinfoil hat with the kids,
Yeah,
and
he's so in it.
but but they're still very skeptical. You know what I mean? But it's not a healthy skepticism. It's like the thing is there, you're seeing it, and I find that very strange. And it's also in a lot of Stephen King, especially in It. The whole town is like gripped by this thing where they don't realize what's going on, and there's murders and there's mayhem, and just nobody, even the police are like, it's just another thing. I
Yeah.
see it in this, I see it in some of the other things we've done, but it's very subtle. And I think that time we explore something like that in a film, because although it's been touched on a little bit here or there, there's never been a film where they totally say, here's the thing, it's people don't want to see this thing, and the evil or whatever it is that the antagonist is using that
Mm-hmm.
that people can't see it because it's so terrible.
Yeah, I
H.P.
think it.
Lovecraft had a thing where he would his gods, Cthulhu was like a terrible god that no human could look on it. If you looked at the face of
It would drive
Cthulhu,
you nuts.
yes, you would just go insane. And so the
Yeah.
whole cult of Cthulhu are all just insane people because they called called the god, and he rose from the ocean, and they looked on his face and they're just like, nah, 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 you know.
Yeah. What I
But
thought
it's like,
was really interesting is that this movie could have gone a completely different direction because it sort of has that end of the world apocalyptic feeling.
I agree, I
It could have
agree.
gone so differently where they could have chose
Also,
to be in town a little more, because if something like this actually happened, just as well as I do, people would be storming
it would
Walmarts,
break
they'd be
down.
stocking
Yeah.
up on toilet paper,
Toilet
there'd
paper.
be mass like looting and
Yeah.
fires, and it would just be a horrible situation. But this
Well,
film, it didn't end up that way, at least in this town. I think it was really smart that they chose a tiny little town, which is really funny. I used to live 3 hours away from Bucks
yeah,
County
where it happens.
when
Yeah.
I was in Pennsylvania, where this movie was filmed, and so I'm really familiar with like that, Amish country, farmland, cows and corn, and people don't really get excited about like the normal mainstream media things in these types of towns, where like now that I live in Myrtle Beach and you're out in California, like where we are now, like no one would take that lightly. There would be so many people freaking out. They'd be storming the churches and looting Walmarts, and everything everywhere. It would just be wild constantly. And they didn't do that in this film. They kept it that small town
Yeah.
calm that was so stinking clever. It was so clever. And they let the rest of the world be crazy while these four people were paranoid and afraid in their own home, but not like that mass hysteria. So I thought that was really, really smart because it showed too how level-headed Graham really is. But at the
You
same
know,
time, when he had his moments of break, like during the Last Supper scene, because the night
God,
before
so
they knew
good.
the aliens were gonna really start doing crazy stuff, they decided everybody was gonna choose whatever they wanted. They were gonna cook whatever they wanted and sit down and eat it together. And so Morgan was like, "I'll have French toast and mashed potatoes," and you know. Meryl wanted beef teriyaki and stuff like that. So they cooked for hours and they all sit down at the table to eat their meal together. And it's like finally he has that moment. Graham has that moment of brokenness that he actually reveals to his children, which is, again, I think another thing that the demon represents, because he was never honest with himself or his kids. He immediately stepped into that role of, I'm their dad, they have to lean on me, I can't show them that I'm hurting too much. And he's going through the most difficult thing he's ever gone through. He lost the love of his life, and he's also lost his faith, which has been such an integral part to him his entire life. That's not an easy thing to go through. And kids aren't stupid. Morgan immediately stepped in to being there for his little sister, and Bo was so in tune to what was happening within the family dynamic. And I feel like even better, like the kids were even more in tune with it than his brother was, than Meryl was. Because those are just the way the kids were written. They're just really special characters. They're just like really good, genuinely good kids. Like, oh,
Real. They came across as very real to
so
me.
real.
They kind of bickered a little bit here and there, you know.
Like brothers
Dad!
and sisters do.
Yeah. That scene at the Last Supper was one of the, I would say
Oh,
that's probably one of Mel Gibson's best acting moments because he cries and eats at the same time and
it's
it's
so hard.
impossible.
It's so hard. And
We
he's like
talked
he's
about it.
trying
We're
to
like,
eat and like
it's so real.
oh.
It's so real.
Yeah,
And
because it's like when you get to that moment and you finally, like, as a parent, when you finally break in front of your children, it's showing weakness. And when you're growing up as a child, you don't think that your parents are weak. You don't think there's anything that can get to your parents. Your parents, are superheroes in your eyes.
yeah,
And so when you finally get to that moment, this would have been that moment for these kids where they're like, maybe dad's not a superhero.
I saw it a little different. I saw it as they never questioned their dad and they rushed to hug him the minute he started crying.
Yeah.
They didn't yell at him or go, no, they were like,
I think it was
they
one of those.
immediately were like,
Yeah, but I
compassion.
but I that's what I'm saying though. It's like maybe dad isn't as strong as we think he is. Maybe he needs us just as much as we need him. And that's how it came
Mm.
across to me, and it was so beautiful cuz like the dad lost his crap, and then Morgan is like losing his crap. He's like, "I hate you," which is wild because Morgan idolizes his father. And then finally, when his father breaks and starts sobbing, it was almost comedic. I love how this film was so dramatic, but also had these adorable moments of comedy because the kids came in and hugged him, and then Graham grabs Meryl by the shirt and is like, "Get in here," and they're
Yeah,
all
I need
sitting
a
there at the
hug.
table. Oh, it was so cute. It was so cute. I really,
And it was the last point in the moment where there was any animosity between them. The
yeah,
rest of the movie, they acted as a whole unit, and God, it was really good to see them come together as a family. Like,
yeah.
I hate to say it, but I would like to see a sequel. I just want to, sometimes I want to see what
Oh,
happens with the characters sometimes. And, sometimes it might ruin it,
yeah. See,
because
I
there's
don't
not,
know. It's such a good
because,
standalone film,
yeah.
and
No, I'm
like,
saying
uh,
I don't want to ruin it, but I would, and the fact of the matter is there's probably nothing ever is going to happen supernatural in their life ever
ever
again.
again.
It's
Because
going to
even when
be,
they were going through that little alien book or whatever that Morgan found, it was like, in the end, they were here to maybe take over the planet, and if the humans won, they'd be back in hundreds or thousands of years later.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
it
if
wouldn't
at
even be
all.
the same family. I think it was just one of those. It was a metaphor for the big moment in any family's life when you go through something awful and scary, and you make a choice. And
Yep.
honestly, I'm really excited because we're going to be discussing this when we get into Hereditary, because Signs and Hereditary are like two sides of the
Opposite.
same coin, but they're complete
Yes.
opposites. Signs is what happens when a family goes through something awful
And
and
supports each other.
supports each other and comes together, whereas Hereditary does the exact opposite and it destroys them. So
Yes.
I'm so excited to get into that
Me
conversation.
too. Me too. That's,
I
both of these movies are in my top. I don't. I hate making lists and I hate saying that this is my top or whatever. I
yeah.
always do it, but like top 100 for sure, and probably top 25, both of them, because they're
Mm-hmm.
both so good. And again, it is hard to say, watch this movie and then watch this movie and then see what is alike in each other. But man, if you really want to have like a good time, watch Signs and then watch Hereditary, or watch Hereditary and watch Signs, and
Yeah.
just marvel at the dynamics, like how polar opposite yet so alike they are. I
Yes.
mean,
I
it's
I
so
was
good.
really shocked because you mentioned when we were watching Signs, you were like, we should watch Hereditary next, and I know that we are all about
I
horror
just
and stuff
stopped.
here, but I was just like, I was a little nervous about it. But like,
Oh,
yes, Hereditary is horrifying, but man, does it actually
it
help?
delivers.
It really delivers, and it helps to put Signs into such a beautiful perspective. And I think, like, I feel like, Signs did really well because people were expecting a creature feature and everything. But then there were a lot of people who complained. And, like, even my husband was like, a lot of people didn't like it. My dad didn't really like it. And it was
Yeah, I don't
because
know.
it was advertised wrong. I think it comes down
Yeah.
to the way it was advertised. People were expecting an alien invasion because wasn't it around this time that Independence Day with Will Smith was coming out or had recently come out?
I mean, I think that had come out a long time before then, but there was other.
But like that's what
The
everybody would
alien
have been
movies were the
comparing it
thing.
to. They
Oh
wanted to
yeah,
see an alien. They wanted to be
yeah,
scared and they wanted some
yeah.
action and stuff. And then the way the commercials and the advertisements went, oh man, it just I feel like it did it such a disservice because had it been advertised as a
Yeah.
coming together.
Oh my gosh, yes. And they had Kathleen Kennedy. They had they had the heavy hitters of the industry working on the movie
Yeah.
too. It was a little slight miss, but I think
Mhm.
M. Night Shyamalan talks about it. He misjudges his audience sometimes because he wants them to be very intelligent, and he always it's not that he misjudges them. He wants the best for his audiences. He
Yeah.
expects the best, and he's like, my audiences, they will understand. They will look at it through an intelligent eye, and they will filter it out, and they will see
Mhm.
that this is the thing, and they'll love it like me. But the fact is, not everybody's the same. I mean, that's just the way it
Yeah.
is. Some people, if I told you this movie is about a preacher losing his faith and regaining it, you would like, no, I don't want to watch that dumb movie. That's
No,
dumb. But if I told you
exactly.
it's aliens come to Earth and this family fights it off. You're like, oh yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
You want the
So,
action.
so it
Ah.
was kind of like a mix between the two. And I remember I saw one trailer was like very dramatic. It just showed the family talking, movements like that. Didn't show any crop circles or aliens. And then there was a polar opposite one that was like crop circles, water being thrown. It was
Mhm.
just like fingers being cut. It was like it showed all the. I mean, it showed all the alien scenes in the
Yeah.
trailer. And it's like if you watch the movie, you saw all the alien scenes in the trailer already. You
Yeah.
saw the alien walk by at the birthday party. You saw the fingers get cut off. You saw the reflection of it standing in the TV set. I'm
Yeah.
serious. Like you saw all that and went, "That's an alien movie. They're fighting aliens. It's Will Smith. Let's
Yeah.
get him."
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I would really encourage people to rewatch this film. If
Me
you've
too.
seen it before and if you haven't seen it, get the aliens out of your head and just look at it from the perspective of everything happens for a reason. And it's
Signs.
so important,
Do you
like
believe in signs?
I do.
Are
I
you?
do.
Do you? I
Absolutely.
mean,
Do you?
I don't.
I know you're so cynical.
I don't. But I love a good story, and I'm not ruling out that something like that could happen.
Mhm.
I would love for it. In fact, my secret desire is that, that there is a supernatural, that there is something we can quantify. But until it happens, I'm always going to be like, and people say this to me all the time. They're like, how come you like ghost movies and you like horror and stuff? It's all supernatural. And I'm like, because it's fiction.
Mhm.
It's kind of scary to me thinking that anything like that could ever be real. And
Mhm.
it's so far fetched to me that I mean, it's just like,
It's entertaining.
again,
Mhm.
it's almost the apathy thing. It's almost
Yeah.
like me going, you know what? I'm apathetic to it because I can't see it.
Yeah.
But That's a
See, I'm
big
so
discussion for
hopeful.
another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
Well,
hopeful too in humanity. You know what I mean? I'm
yeah.
hopeful.
Yeah, no,
I'm hopeful that we
absolutely.
can do the right thing and not pull the trigger, you
Oh, yeah.
know?
Well, thank you guys so much for being here with us as we
Thank
discuss
you.
this amazing film and amazing director. We really love what we've been able to do here on the final chapter so far.
Yes.
Next, we are going to be discussing Hereditary in our next episode, so keep an eye out. We really wanted to put these two films together, as we were discussing earlier. Two totally different films, totally different outcomes, but in a way really came together, and it really helps us to fully discuss this like sort of topic of losing faith and family trauma and generational curses, and how you can either choose to come together and overcome it as a family unit, or you can allow it to completely destroy you from the inside out. And so keep an eye out for that. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel if you enjoy watching all of our discussions, and ring the bell if you would like to have a notification for whenever we post new videos and shorts. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.